All right. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us today. Today is March 24th. And as usual, I got to start up my laptop to make sure I can see those that are on Facebook, have any questions. And then you can also listen to this on Spotify, wherever you hear your information. So with us today, we have Jaemie Neely. She's the executive director of the Federation of Women Contractors. So I brought out a mug. I dug it out. It was really cute. I had to buy it like about a year ago or so, but it's a little handyman mug today. So got a little. This is my definition of contracting, which is much different than you're going to hear from Executive Director Neely's definition of contracting. But to me, when you look at contractors, you look at people that build things, people that just keep everything moving, to be quite honest. And so this is the little bit that I do. I contract out a little bit of stuff for my house. So cheers to Jaemie. Thanks for coming with us. So if you don't know Executive Director Neely, she's really a recognized leader in business diversity, public procurement, and economic equity for women and minority-owned businesses. Currently serves as the Executive Director of the Federation of Women Contractors. So you might not have ever heard of what the Federation of Women Contractors are. Actually, believe it or not, I didn't know about it till I came to Springfield, but it is the oldest and most recognized organization of its kind in the construction and design industry. Under her leadership, the Federation of Women Contractors continues to expand opportunities for women entrepreneurs in one of the country's most competitive sectors. So what's her background? What is she about? Well, she has a 15-year background in small businesses and nonprofit banking. She did make a career shift into advocacy and government contracting. She led the Illinois Procurement Technical Assistance Center at the Women's Business Development Center, helping hundreds of small businesses navigate public contracts. And public contracts is not an easy thing, I have to tell you. Way back in the day when I first started, I was roommates with Kate Clunan, and she was a woman-owned business, and she'd be up at like 2 or 3 in the morning working on bid documents, these big, long bid documents. So public contracting is not easy. She also had served as the manager of small business development and outreach for the Chicago Transit Authority. And then in 2022, I'm almost getting tired of everything she did. It's a Monday morning, 2022, to serve as chair of the Illinois Procurement Policy Board, becoming the first woman to hold that position. She's a recent graduate of IWIL and Illinois Women in Leadership. A new puppy mom. Oh, God bless you for that. I tell you, the hardest thing in the world is a puppy. And she continues to work with legislation and policy efforts to promote transparency, fairness, and equity in procurement. So through all that, and then a puppy on top of that. Oh, oy vey, I gotta tell you. So of course, uh, uh, we're gonna start off. I showed my coffee mug, so if you want to show the group, what are you drinking out of today? And there you go. Oh, there we go.
Wait, wait.
It keeps getting into. There you go.
Hey.
And then, yeah, if you just want to talk a little bit about Federation of Women Contractors, what the organization does, and who you represent.
Absolutely. Well, first, good morning. Good morning to you, Representative Kifowit, and thank you for having me in the Federation of Women Contractors this morning. And good morning to all the viewers and listeners. We're excited to join you guys. So yes, I am the executive director of the Federation of Women Contractors. The FWC is a now 36-year-old membership organization advocating for women owners in the commercial construction industry. Representative, you can imagine 36 years ago that women did not have the opportunities that we have today, right? And we are fortunate to have those opportunities now through the legislation and through the advocacy of organizations like the FWC, right? That has identified the need or the desire to penetrate or get inside an industry, but understanding that sometimes it only happens by way of law or legislation, right? And so FWC was birthed to create more opportunities for the women in the industry. I like to say we sit on three pillars, if you will. One, as I mentioned, leading with legislation, having a seat at the table with City of Chicago and other Collier County areas, the state of Illinois, federal government agencies. Again, just making sure that they're aligning their policies and procurement practices such that it is equitable for all small and large businesses. Secondly, networking, making sure that we are connecting our members to those opportunities, to the contracts, to the contacts, to the capital, all of the tools and resources that they need to be successful, which leads me to our third pillar, which is the support, right? Getting a contract is one thing, but making sure that they're successful on that project is another thing. Making sure that they're getting paid timely, making sure that their certification processes are being adhered to. So just a wraparound support to not only women-owned businesses, but all businesses in the commercial construction industry. We have about over 100 members representing over 100 Illinois zip codes, which means we're pretty widespread throughout the state. Many of our members are signatory to a union, so a lot of labor representatives within our membership. And many of our members are established. So again, we're 36. Many of our members have grown with us over the years, and we've been fortunate to gather the next generation or the next group of leaders, because it doesn't necessarily always mean generational, but the next group of leaders in our space. And yeah, I've been over here now for 4 years, and it's been a complete joy to be a voice for a group of hardworking women that are boots on the ground, literally building our economy, literally from the ground up here in Illinois.
Oh, that's a lot, but that's a lot that's needed. And I like that you pointed out that even though you're the Federation of Women Contractors, that you're open to pretty much anybody that really needs help, which I think is really important, because while a lot of things have changed, a lot of things have gotten better, there are still struggles, right? There's still struggles just overall to get into contracting, public contracting, or just contracting in general. And so this is very different from what you used to have. So your background is in banking and public contracting and policy. And now, how is this role different, or did you think it just fits right into what you wanted to do with your credentials? And if you want to expound a little bit on that, that would be great.
It's a really comprehensive opportunity for me, Representative. So I did spend about 15 years from high school, college, and post undergrad in the banking industry. Spending at least 8 years at Shore Bank, and then went on to Urban Partnership Bank, which was historically the first community development financial institution here in Chicago. And that type of CDFI is designed or geared to really support and bank the unbanked, particularly on the south and west sides of Chicago. And so through that opportunity, it allowed me to grow closer by way of managing this portfolio of small businesses and nonprofits. It allowed me to really learn my community, right? The economics, understand that small businesses employ 90+% of our nation. And so to become intimate with them and learning their numbers, and the numbers tell stories, it allowed me to really understand, like, all right, during this time, recession, lending, banking, wasn't, banks were failing and things were shifting, right? And so I wanted to find a different way to better support these small businesses that I once banked. It hurt my heart, Representative, when they would come in and apply for a loan, and it was almost their lifeline to the business, right? It was like, if I don't get this loan, I may have to close the door, and having to deny those loans. I wanted to find a different path to support them. And so I learned about the government contracting by way of Amelia Domingo, who is now retiring from the Women's Business Development Center. But before that, she had a banking career too, 30 years. And so under her leadership, she allowed me to grow really interested and learn a lot about government contracting. I started the first ever government contracting cohort at the Women's Business Development Center. So understanding business and the economics of what it drives in our local economy and finding a different pathway to support those businesses and scale and grow so that they can contribute more to our local economy, I think was the pathway for me. And it all just kind of connected, right? I think the common denominator is economic development, it's small businesses, and it's getting folks and keeping folks working within our communities.
That's the number one thing. That's what everybody wants, is just to be able to work, take care of their family, afford the price of eggs, no matter if they go up or down, and have a little bit left over for something that's that's a fun purchase or a fun vacation or a night out to have precious time with family. And so that's just like common American principles, that folks just want to have a good job. They just want to be able to pay their bills, and it's exciting that you're here to help make that happen for so many people and so many businesses. So I think that's wonderful. So what are your views? How do you feel, or how do you work with when you look at construction? You look in the room, and it's really a male dominated field when you look at all the different constructions. Now, women, we just had Tradeswomen Build Nations, a group called Tradeswomen Brings Over Springfield. It stems from the national group down here to the state level. We just had those amazing women from all over. You talked about labor, from all over the labor field, just talking about being a woman in the trades and some of the things that we don't think about, and some of the things that they've had to advocate for is like cleaner restroom facilities, and childcare hours that are outside of the normal 8 to 5 job, because people in construction are not just 8 to 5 job workers. And those kind of struggles that women have seen, and the strides that are being made, and the efforts that are being made to expand trades and contracting to women. So what do you view? What do you view the pluses? Where we come? Where do we still have to go for women in construction and design, and particularly about women owning the construction businesses, and women really being the boss too. What are some of your insights with regards to that dynamic?
Yeah, it's still surprising, Representative, when we go out and we volunteer and we're in front of young girls talking about STEM opportunities. And even in 2024, 2025, young girls are still asking us, girls can be engineers, or women can be architects. Like, that's still a misnomer, right? That's not always a presented pathway for our young female youth. And so the FWC, our theme, you talk about themes, Representative, is this year our theme is shifting the perspective, right? It's just understanding that there's going to be changing times, challenging times even, but it's ultimately how we look at it and how we navigate those pathways is ultimately going to make the difference. And so we try to be that to the young female, the female youth, or just, again, the next group of leaders in our space. And what does that look like, right? It's being present. It's, you can't, what's the saying? You can't be it if you don't see it, right? It's being present, allowing them to see women in this space in construction. It's breaking down those barriers, again, so that those opportunities are and will continue to be available to them for generations to come. And we stand with labor, right? We understand that construction is by far one of very, very few industries where women are equally paid. At least 97% of men pay, right, through our unions. And so we don't take that for granted. That's an opportunity for our women to be on the job sites and get paid fairly and equally. But yet, and still, as you mentioned, we've come so far, yet have so far to go. The women ownership in the commercial construction industry is now up to 13%. So women owners represent 13% of the commercial construction industry, which is huge, Representative. Like, again, 36 years ago, that number was probably 0.004, it was nominal. And so to see the industry grow, to see that these developments and these projects and the owners and the agencies have committed to making sure that they carve out a particular spin goal to make sure that these women gain the opportunities, I think is huge. And that's what creates the opportunity for not only our owners, but again, those owners to come in the future. So in all, we partner with, we're very collaborative with all partners, right? Whether it's Chicago Women in Trade, whether it's Revolution Workshop or other organizations who advocate for women and minorities in the trade, but also partnering with them, as you mentioned, Representative, with planting the seed of ownership, right? So while they're navigating their very successful careers in the trades, right, and they're elevating and going from journeyman to superintendent and they're scaling, you know, if we just drop a seed early on and say, hey, as you navigate this, possibly at the end of the rainbow, right, perhaps you may want to start your own business. And if you think about that as you're journeying through your career, you notice things and you put things in your back pocket to say, oh, when I run my business, this is the type of operation I want. And so we do a lot of collaborating that way, but also looking at just regular individuals, like business, like just a banker who knows business acumen, you know, who may want to go buy or start a business. Part of it is understanding the trade, but the other piece of it is really understanding how to run a business. And sometimes the two aren't always married. And so that's where we come in to kind of support one versus the other, right? If you're gifted at your craft, let us give you some business support. Or if you're gifted at the support, let us kind of immerse you in this construction industry. So just being present and being visible and making sure that we are showing the youth that it's a pathway possible for them.
I think you hit on such a great point, is that what you said, you can be really good at your craft, but then starting a business, it can be overwhelming. Like there's so much minutia in a business, so much minutia in payroll, in state laws and federal law, registration, that it can be overwhelming to an individual who might just say, look, I just wanted to start a small business. I just wanted to do what I love, but be my own boss. But then you realize, you know, the gravity of regulation, which we need regulation. Don't get you wrong, because you know we need OSHA, we need regulation. Individuals that think they don't need government, they're not quite right. but you gotta deal with all the regulation. You gotta deal with all the paperwork. You gotta deal with all the payroll. You have to deal with all the things that aren't fun if you just enjoy doing your craft. So I think that's a point that I just wanted to reiterate, that organizations such as yours can help with establishing that, find the strengths and the weaknesses, and work to put people in place that need to be in place to be able to start a job. Because you know, you could be a union individual, and then you start a union shop, and then now you're the boss. You got to negotiate the contracts, and you got to get the job done. And so that's it's no easy task. So I've known a lot of people that were good at their craft, or good at cooking, or good at baking, and they started their own business and then realized it's truly the paperwork and the minutia really brings them down, and can cause them not to be successful. So that's a wonderful experience that an organization such as yours. So recently, you know, we've had a lot of discussions about diversity, mostly on the national level. And the state of Illinois has an equity and inclusion component to it that we have started. And I try to inform people that equity and inclusion, it includes a lot of people. And myself, I'm a veteran. It includes veterans, and includes disabled veterans. And all it does is it looks at the landscape and says, how can we open the door wide enough to give people the biggest opportunity to compete? It's not giving, in my opinion, it's not giving preferential treatment. Equitable treatment is being able to see, like I mentioned earlier, like if we're not getting enough women in the trades because there's no childcare to make it equal. So let's look at ensuring that there's childcare available for, because primarily if you're a single mom and you're getting in the trades, which we're seeing, you need to have that support. So in your company, how do you look at and how do you maneuver about making sure that the doors of opportunity are open as wide as they can be to make sure that we bring in, you know, motivated, qualified, and amazing individuals into the construction industry, into the contracting industry.
Yeah, and we're doing, I think we're doing more of it today than we have the last couple of decades, honestly. I think we're missing a pipeline of potential young women and men actually that could have been in our pipeline. I think particularly my generation or my parents' generation, we have a funny family story. My sister, she is 7 years younger than I. So my both my parents undereducated by formal education, right? Uh, thought that their key to their children's success was by way of education, right? So they were, you're going to go to high school, you're going to graduate, you're going to go to college, you're going to go get this degree, and you're going to go get a corporate job. And that was our assignment, right? So my brother started first. He understood the assignment, went off to high school, graduated from Colgate University, went off to corporate America. I was up next, went to Alabama State University, graduated, went off into banking. My sister, she's again 7 years younger than I, so she was in high school as I'm kind of entering into my professional space. And so she comes home and she sees her friend's mom with her construction girl. She comes home and she says, Jaemie, I think I want to go into construction. And honestly, Representative, I totally shunned the idea. I shunned the idea, one, because our parents gave us an assignment. No, we're going to go, we're going to graduate from high school, go to college, and go get this corporate job. And it was just in those couple of decades where the trades were pulled out of our school system. It no longer was a priority or a presented pathway for us. It was either you go this college career or nothing, right? Or you know, help yourself. And so now my sister laughs at me and say, "Oh, really? Now you're advocating for women in construction when you shun my dreams away?" But I didn't know any better, right? And now that I understand the pathway again, that these women can get paid 97% of a man's pay, um, the more information I know, the more I can go out there and share with those interested people, whether it's young girls, whether it's working with the YWCA for their adult, you know, maybe there were teachers who have degrees who just want to pivot into a different industry for whatever reason. I'm just being that as a support and helping them navigate, providing the resources. Again, we're very collaborative. So even if the FWC may not have all of the answers, we're smart enough to know the players who do. So we want to make sure that we wrap our whole arms around any business owner, again, because we understand that all of our small businesses are employing the people in our neighborhood. And if they don't have jobs, we're all doomed. So I think banding together and collaborating to make sure that everyone's working, everyone's able to provide that economic back into those communities, I think is our ultimate goal as an organization, but I think as a great state of Illinois too.
It's a great story. Did your sister end up going into the trades?
She didn't. She's an educator for Chicago Public School, and she loves her job. And she teaches at Hyde Park Academy, which is right across the street from the Obama Presidential Center, which is all construction. So for the last 2 years, she's not let me live this down because she sees the construction site every day. So, but she's doing well and she enjoys teaching her kids.
Oh no, that's exciting. And you're 100% right. And as you probably know that all around they have equal pay day, which is the day that it's like 18 months for 1 year's of pay for a male oriented, you know, and then women make, you know, 18 months later we'll get the equal amount. But I always say on equal pay day that women and men, it doesn't matter, when you do the work, you get the pay in a union. And I think that, you know, that is one of the things that unfortunately, hopefully people start really understanding. And as I see more and more areas unionizing to get equal pay for equal work, it's really motivating, to be quite honest. Excuse me. So high schools are having trade expos. We have one here in Oswego. Let's talk about outreach to high schoolers.
Yeah, it's something that we've been prioritizing a little bit more the last couple of years, partnering with, we've been going out to Wilmington High School, which is far out, but they're again just trying to engage their youth into different career paths. God bless you. And then working with Polish Pebbles with their Pink Hard Hats program. Again, working with Chicago Women in Trades, working with different organizations whenever there's a call. We just had a call with the YWCA and understanding their entrepreneurship programs as well as their construction programs. God bless you. So just wherever we can find, whether it's one person or a group of women that we can kind of share the opportunities. And again, a lot of what we do is legislatively driven. So we are the force behind making sure that these are opportunities. So for instance, so we are pushing House Bill 1224, which encourages our state agencies retainage procurement practices. So what does that mean is that in construction, Representative, you've been there supporting with us quite a bit over the last couple of years. In construction, agencies, owners typically hold 10% of the contract value until 50% of project completion. So halfway through the project, they'll release 5% of that, and then they'll hold the remaining 5% until the end of the project. And when I say the end of the project, that means all things are closed out. Every subcontractor paperwork was filed in, and there are many, sometimes hundreds of subcontractors. So that time frame can be a little exhausting, right? And you take, for instance, one of the first in, first out contractors. So the excavator that's coming in, digging the dirt, like they're first in. So the building, they have to wait for their payment when the building is already up, occupied, and sometimes 2 or 3 years thereafter, right? And so through our legislation this year, that benefits not only small businesses, but also our larger general contractors too. They want to get paid, and they should not also have to play bait to ourselves or to the agencies. We gained in success in that legislation. Again, very collaborative. We had some hard legislation on the same topic last year. Strongly opposed, went to the drawing table, went back to the drawing table, talked to our opposition. Hey, what are your concerns? How can we make this work for everyone? As I always say, if it doesn't work for everyone, it won't work for my members ultimately. So came back this year with some tightened up legislation that got a lot of support even from last year's last session opposition. And so those are the things that we want to make sure, hey, if our contractors get a job and you're holding on to their 5%, and sometimes in construction, their margin is only 3%, and you're holding on to it and you're not paying interest on it, it's hardship. So through this legislation, it just suggests that aligning that procurement practice to that of the federal government that says, don't hold the retainage unless you really need it, right? And so defining what does it mean when you really need it, but it just shouldn't be a blanket policy. Sometimes we just get in a habit of just doing things because that's the way it's always been done. So again, just making sure that, we have a voice to say, okay, I know that's the way it's always been done, but do we have to continue to do it that way? Because it's really creating a hardship for our small and our large businesses.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I went off camera to sneeze because it's allergy season in the springtime. So thank you for your thoughtfulness. But so I think it's 100% right. And like you were saying, the legislative process is not one and done. Sometimes bills get introduced and they take multiple years to work through the as you said, the opposition. And it's not always easy to change the norm because people sometimes have a hard time saying, oh, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But it is broken. You just can't see it because it's like, and you pointed out quite succinctly. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, the excavators, they're there digging up the dirt, first in, first out, and then you got to put it all up, and the elevators are one of the first things that get put in, and then they're done, and then they build the building around them. And you're right, it's not right for them to have to wait, what, 6 months, 9 months, maybe over a year until or 2 years. Yeah. For that contractor to get that 5% retainer back because they've already moved on to other other projects. So, and you pointed it out too, to not get any interest on that. Because if they're going to be holding that amount, the least that should happen is they should be gaining interest because they're not able to use that money at all.
And oftentimes, representative, they're paying interest on if they have a line of credit to cash flow because they're waiting on that money. So they're paying interest on dollars that they should be using as profitability. So, but it's good. You know, I think again we're getting a lot of support from the agency this session and this bill, and we got it voted unanimously yes through the State Government Association Committee a few weeks ago with some amendments to language. But yeah, it's moving. But I just wanted to point that out as a piece of legislation, one of very many over the last 36 years that we continue to identify to make sure again that they're fair and equitable practices to make sure that our businesses not only are in surviving mode, but they're thriving and they're scaling and they're continuing to grow.
And this is where organizations such as yours are so important, because businesses, they're just going about their business day by day. They don't have time to actually look at changing laws or practices or policies because they're trying to get the projects up and going and bid. It's a never ending cycle. So organizations like yours, correct me if I'm wrong, but bridge the gap between industry and governmentals, agencies and legislators and stuff to that effect, so that we can fill these gaps, find out where these barriers are, and work to correct it so that we can have both successful contractors and successful projects that get done on time, union labor, prevailing wage, and again, goes right back to the worker so that they can put food on the table, roof over the head, and have a little extra money to enjoy life a little bit. So what other organizations do you work with? Because I know that in Springfield, I see a lot of organizations working together for the common good. You said you work with labor organizations. Do you also work with, you know, all sorts of other trade organizations? Like, what's a day in the life of in your chair at your desk? Who are you all working with?
Absolutely. I pride the FWC with being such a collaborative partner across the board. I think we have an active board too, that they're contractors, so they are closer to the project, closer to the issue, very insightful. And so they bring a wealth of knowledge, current knowledge, but also many of them have been around again for the duration of our organization. So they have a lot of institutional knowledge from the industry, but also the organization. And so with that, we have historically always teamed up with HACIA, which is the Hispanic American Construction Industry Association, much like we advocate for our women and more, right? And they advocate for Hispanic and more contractors. We partner, we share the same lobbyists, we have a seat at the table, we address what legislation we're looking to, you know, look at for each session, where we may align. Sometimes we don't always align with our legislative agenda. But where we do, we go at it together because we've learned we're stronger in numbers. Also, the Black Contractors, Owners, and Executives, DECO, another Contractors Association, WCOE, another Women, Asian American, ACE. We're just very collaborative because it's not just our problem. I think if there's an opportunity where my member or a member may have an issue, I can guarantee that member isn't the only person that has experienced that issue, right? So how do I talk to my peer executive directors or leaders to say, hey, what issues are your members having over there? And then similarly mine, and then where we can kind of gain some traction. We're also very close with our general contractors. Many of our women-owned members are single or specialty trade contractors, so they're oftentimes subs to the primes, and so it's beneficial, right, for us to be friends with those general contractors, right? That they have the opportunities, and so they have been and still, even through all the challenges, as you mentioned, Representative, of all of the DEI threats, we have our members, our general contractors are just standing up even stronger now, and say, hey, we're here. Whatever we have to call it, we'll call it whatever we have to, but just know our commitment to having equitable opportunities for all small businesses will remain. Put a name on it, whatever, but that commitment, I think, says a lot too. So government, public and private. So a lot of the organization was kind of built off of public contracting, just because through legislation, that's where a lot of the early on mandates were. As you mentioned, it's not uh, giving these underrepresented groups preferential treatment or anything like that. It's just carving out a space so that they can merely have an opportunity, like not an opportunity for anyone, just a seat at the table to be presented to have an opportunity. And so we want to make sure that every step of the way, everyone's being held accountable. Our small businesses, making sure that they're doing their part, they're showing up on the job site, they're managing their paperwork correctly, they're working with the labor and their union properly, and they're just being a good trade partner. We hold our fines, making sure that they're paying our folks, treating them well, the agencies, like every level throughout the construction project, as you know, has important and key roles. And we, as an organization, hold ourselves accountable, but also are there to hold every other piece of the project accountable too.
That sounds amazing. And you do that with a modest staff.
That's an overstatement. Yeah, we're small but mighty. I think by our nature of the name, the Federation of Women Contractors, one, people think it's very national. We're Chicagoland centric. Again, Illinois, many of our members are across the state, but mostly Chicagoland area. But our legislation is impactful across the state, and should be mocked and mimicked across other states, right? And we've considered that too. Our neighboring states who may not have as many equitable procurement practices as the state of Illinois does could use some of our legislation, right? Could use some of our advocacy, and we'll consider what that looks like. But in this juncture of our political climate, it is our priority this year to just make sure that we continue to have some equitable pathways for our public and private contract through all of the challenges and threats to the programs.
That sounds amazing. And I'm sure there's organizations that you partner with on the national level to keep abreast of what's going on nationwide for contracting as well. So
absolutely. So like the Women in Public Policy, NABO, National Women Business Association, they're more federal, national policy folks. And so while we are more local, city, county, state, we definitely collaborate with them, particularly now, right, where a lot of this is coming from federal space, and we're kind of leaning into their expertise and their advocacy to know how do we partner and champion things together.
absolutely. And this is another added value that you bring to your group and individuals with your group, because like I just read an article that the federal government is canceling contracts, and there's a big contract for I think $76 million going to Louisiana that they just froze. And so all those contractors that got all those bids that thought they were awarded work, now all of a sudden they froze that contract, and it was in the renewable energy sector, which is an up and booming sector. And now all those individuals need to figure out or reprioritize or just go without, because it's very, very difficult when Congress approved the money was awarded, you're expecting that contract. You thought you did everything right, and then the administration shifts and the contracts are frozen. So that's got to be frustrating as well, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the contractors, the companies, they have to put in a lot of capital up front to make sure that they can do that contract, whether that's hiring new people or buying new equipment, and so now when those federal contracts are canceled, that they can really be out a significant amount of capital that they put in, that they're mortgaging or like you said, bought on credit, and it can cause a lot of hardship. And I would assume that your organization and organizations similar to yours are there to help companies if that were to happen as well.
Absolutely. That's our daily conversation right now. While when the first kind of case came down with the Harvard case around the DEI emissions, we kind of understood we saw the writing on the wall at that time. So you asked Representative about like who we collaborate with. So we went to some of the partners who were there 20 years ago with the FWC when our local city and county NWBE programs were challenged. And we huddled and said, hey, we've seen this before. It's happening in the federal space and education. Could it possibly reach procurement? And the thought was maybe, right? So what do we do to become proactive or even put a reactive plan together in the event that it streamlines to our procurement? And so we went out, we spoke with city, county, state legislators and officials. We had a meeting with Attorney General, Kwame Raoul, to say, hey, the writing is on the wall. Where is this headed? And where does this live? What does it mean for the state of Illinois and our procurement? And so I think early on, I think our state was very confident that it wouldn't penetrate or wouldn't impact us, particularly as quickly as it did. But by way of this case, this Mid-America Milling case out of Indiana, I believe, where they sued Indiana Department of Transportation in discrimination because they mentioned that many of the contracts were going to DBEs, particularly women owners, and they were discriminated against because they were neither women or a minority. And so through that case, that injunction then said not only in Indiana and Kentucky, which were the first two states, the judge then ruled that this injunction will be over 23 states, which Illinois was included. What does that mean, Representative? It means that now, anytime these two contractors set to bid on an IDOT project or IDOT solicitation, IDOT then has to remove any DBE goals that may have been attached to that contract. So in November, IDOT had, I think, 139 contracts in their letting, and they had to retract 21 of those contracts that totaled $11 million of DBE spend. So that was $11 million that would have gone to DBE, that would have gone to their employees, that would have been spent in the communities of which they live and serve, that are now just gone, right? And so although, again, we thought our local procurement practices and policies were in place, that it would be untouched, but right now it's impacting our DBE spend. And we're just, making sure that we stay informed and ready to be proactive or reactive to anything that should come down to our local program.
Then just for folks that might tune in later, or when you talk about DBE goals, again, it's not preferential treatment, and it's not giving anybody else a leg up above somebody else. What it is, it's just saying when you look at the environment, when you look at the bids, when you look at everything being equal, that there's a goal to make sure that there's DBE in that bid process or in that procurement, because I'm not in the industry. That letting, right? In that letting.
Yep, no, you're absolutely right. So the disadvantaged business enterprise, that's the DBE. It encompasses both race and gender, but also economic disadvantages. So there's a personal net worth threshold that also is a component to that is different from perhaps an MNWBE certification. But you're absolutely right. So that DBE, it doesn't give anyone a shoe in by any means, right? These contractors have to be capable. They have to have the capacity to perform. They have to have the bonding. They have to be signatory. They have to be compliant to every part of the procurement and construction project. So they're not coming in without the merit of being awarded. They're coming in as a DBE because historically they weren't ever allowed or presented to have those opportunities. So by way of these MW and DBE programs, it just provides the mere opportunity to be seen or to have your bid looked at or even considered, again, because historically that may not have always been the case.
Historically, we've seen that bids have sometimes gone to repeat companies again and again and again and again. So it kind of breaks that cycle of perceived or actual favoritism or something to that effect, just to give, again, everything has to be equal. I feel the need to keep repeating this because there's so much misinformation out there. Everything needs to be equal. The bid packets have to be equal. They have to be able to show they can do the work in the same manner in which everybody else in the bid packets is. And the set aside is just saying everything being equal, we're going to work at diversifying the companies that we work with.
And when I say historically have these opportunities hadn't been presented, I just want to clarify that isn't Jaemie or even the FWC suggesting that. There's been years and years of disparity studies through the city of Chicago, Cook County, state of Illinois, different agencies across those levels of government that has been performed, that has been surveyed, that has done data analysis to determine that there is quite a disparity from which women, minorities, and veterans, even, and thank you for your services, Representative, had not been privy to. And so by way of these disparity studies, it's proven. So I just want to make sure that it's not, Jaemie suggesting this as opposed to years of hard work and study doing these disparity studies have proven.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of work and a lot of things that we have to advocate for, but I appreciate you coming on. I'm going to switch right now to give just a little bit of a Springfield update. We were in Springfield all last week. Last week was deadline week, and so you're free to stay on or you can pop off. But thank you so much, Jaemie Neely, the Executive Director of the Federation of Women's Contracts. Got a lot on her plate, has a small but mighty staff, and we look forward to doing all we can do to support our businesses in Springfield. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Representative. And thank you again for always showing up for us. Every time the FWC has a lobby day in Springfield, you're one of the first right there in the door to support us and just hear our concerns out. And at minimum, that's all we can ask for. So thanks for being a partner in legislation, and we look forward to doing more policy with you in the future.
Oh, sounds wonderful. Well, thank you so much and have a good rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to Springfield. Well, first, I always like to touch on our national holidays. These are national days that come from our Congress back in the day. And today, Monday, March 24th, is National Chocolate Covered Raisin Day. Can't make it up. I did not think of this, but I have to say, who does not enjoy chocolate covered raisins? I particularly love them at the movie theater, of course. Sweet, chewy combination. And I call it vintage treat because it's goes way back to my childhood. So vintage, America's favorite, Raisinets were born, if you call them born, created in 1927 at the Blumenthal Brothers Chocolate Company in Philadelphia. Of course, as I mentioned, they are a movie theater must-have. In 1984, Nestle took over the brand. And today, Raisinets are made right here in Illinois under the Ferrera Candy Group, a proud part of the Ferrero family of brands. So we can be very happy. Another thing about the state of Illinois is we are now the home of Raisinets, which is one of my favorite chocolates, to be quite honest. So Ferrera is headquartered right here in Oak Brook Terrace, Illinois. And they have a whole bunch of sweet things under their brand. It's either whatever you do with the chocolates, you can mix them with granola. You can always top it in any kind of charcuterie board or stuffing them inside of raspberries, which is really good. So chocolate covered raisinets and chocolate covered raisins are a timeless treat worth celebrating. Now, the next national day, and it's not, I can't believe it when I saw it, but believe it or not, March 24th is National Stephanie Day. I can't believe it when I saw that. So there's a lot of incredible Stephanies out there. I don't see them so much these days. As you know, names cycle in and out, and My name, believe it or not, I was named after my grandmother. And so my grandmother's name was Stephanie. So certainly I hold that near and dear. She's since long passed, but a product of the Depression, my grandmother instilled upon me to be appreciative of all that we have, to appreciate and help those that don't have it, and really to be a bit frugal. And so I always remember them. Both my grandparents went through the Depression, so it's National Stephanie Day. So my name, Stephanie, has royal roots. It's derived from the Greek word Stephanos, meaning garland crown. It's the feminine form of Stephen, a name that once referred to monks in Old England. English gained popularity after the Norman conquest. It also carries a bit of a spiritual meaning. Saint Stephen, for whom the name originates, was also known as the first Christian martyr. As I said, popularity dipped down. So I don't see many Stephanies. In fact, I think I'm the only one in the General Assembly. But it is shared across by millions of women across the world. And so, and maybe it might have a resurgence because I've known a couple people who had smaller kids nowadays, and they're bringing back the old time names of Charlie and Henry and Ida and those kind of really vintage names as well. So it might come back in a resurgence. So whether you know somebody named Stephanie or not, you all know me. So today is the day to shine for them. So maybe send a crown emoji to your favorite Stephanie out there and let them all know that their name is tied to royalty. So I kind of like that. Another day today, which really I have another great memory too. Whenever I had to pick up my son from school, as we go east, we would, if he missed the bus or had to stay after or whatnot, my son and I would go to Dairy Queen just for a little sweet treat after school. So Dairy Queen celebrates 85 years. So they're celebrating their 85th birthday with 85-cent blizzards. So I think that's pretty fun. It's available from March 24th to April 6th. Back in the day, way back in the day, for one summer season, I did work at a walk-up Dairy Queen in downtown Wheaton, Illinois. I believe it might still be there. So it was only seasonal, open just during the spring, summer months. And certainly Dairy Queen is a lot of fun and holds some memories for a lot of folks. So the very first Dairy Queen, again, another Illinois fun fact, the very first Dairy Queen opened in Joliet, Illinois in 1940. So certainly that's a sweet tradition and even funner for those of Illinois. So there you go, some fun facts for Illinois. So what have we been doing in the General Assembly? Well, last week was deadline week, as I mentioned. And what happened in deadline week? So in the House, thousands of bills are filed. Thousands of bills are filed. Then they go to committee and then they get considered in committee. Some bills get out of committee. Some bills stay in committee. Some bills die on the vine. Some bills that don't make it out of committee come back again in what we call an omnibus bill, which is a big bill of all these small bills that they just kind of make together. So last week was deadline week, but it from all the thousands of bills that were filed, we moved about 382 bills to the floor last week. Now there were already bills on the floor, and the Senate advanced 137 bills. So it's interesting to see what all bills that didn't get called, what all bills might be. I know might be put into a bigger bill. Some of my bills will happen too. But I did have some bills that we moved onto the House floor, still working on it. One of my bills is to assign mental health providers for youth in DCFS care. Now, the essence of this bill is DCFS has a screening process. Kids in crisis, they get mental health. If they don't screen that they're in crisis, then they don't get connected with a mental health provider. One of the points that I make is that just because someone is not in crisis doesn't mean we can't be preventative with the mental health care. If a child enters DCFS care, that means they're being removed from their home and into a home that they may not know, or if they do know, like I mentioned, my grandmother, they would move from a house that they grew up in into like a grandmother's house, an uncle's house. And I got to be quite honest. I love my grandmother. I'm named after my grandmother. I don't think I'd want to live with my grandmother, to be quite honest. It would be quite the shock if I had to think about moving from the house that I grew up in, the friends that I knew, and the the surroundings that made me comfortable and shaped my childhood into my grandmother's home, completely an hour away, right there on 56th and Pulaski in a two flat, and it would be quite the change. Now, you would think maybe it wouldn't be that much of a change when to create a crisis, but it's still a change. It's still a change. And my point is we should be there at the start to help with preventative mental health care to help children understand what's going on so that maybe they won't go into crisis. They'll be able to understand, rationalize, and work through the situation they're in. So that bill got out of committee, is on the House floor, making a little bit of amendments to it, but hopefully get that through. Now, firefighter age, I have a bill, 2476. This bill, predominantly might be in a bigger bill. It did not get out of committee, but we're still working on it. Fire departments have a cadet program, and that's for high schoolers. And so when high schoolers get to be 18, they go through this fire cadet program. They might be excited to be a firefighter. However, state law does not allow them to go into the fire service until they're 21. So the city of Chicago, many years ago, they have an 18-year, your 18-year-olds, they can be hired in Chicago, out in the suburbs or not. So looking at being able to create a new pipeline of firefighters with my House Bill 2476, which lowers the firefighter eligibility from 21 to 18. They can go through the cadet program through the high school and go right into a rewarding job in the fire service as a firefighter. So certainly working with that. As I've mentioned before, working with veterans and active duty individuals that are facing domestic violence situations, being able to provide expanded resources. This passed the House last year, did not get called in the Senate, passing it again. What it does, it just expands. We have a fund already in Illinois called the Domestic Violence Shelter and Service Fund. And it enables the Illinois Department of Human Services to issue grants covering travel costs. So what this does is it expands it to allow veteran service providers to be able to access these grants to help with active duty military or veterans attending court proceedings and other expenses with regards to supporting survivors of domestic violence. This has come down from our state liaison from the DOD. So the DOD under the previous administration, and it has carried over at this point in time with this administration, is ensuring that we have support for victims of military sexual trauma and domestic violence with regards to our active duty service members and our veterans as well. Looking at another bill, this bill is amends the Open Meetings Act so that folks that are on reserve duty, active military duty, and they happen to be an elected official can Zoom in and vote and represent their district while they are serving their country as well. Nowadays, with the amazing technology we have, in fact, when I was visiting my son in Japan, I was Zooming in with individuals talking about bills, bills that we were trying to pass. It was 11 o'clock at night my time and 8 o'clock in the morning here, and we were able to Zoom and have a meeting and get some agreement on a bill. So with the technology we have today, it's only the right thing to do to allow our members who are in the reserve, and if they get called up on active military duty, that they can Zoom in, they can vote, they can represent their districts in whatever elected capacity they could be. It could be school board, it could be city council. Certainly that's one of the things that we should offer. So that bill may or may not be a standalone bill. It might go into a bigger bill because there are several bills with regards to Open Meetings Act that are being considered at this point in time. And then military license plates. So individuals that I know that have a Marine Corps license plate on their car, if you are 100% disabled, you get a fee waiver with regards to the cost of the license plate. Now, there is an additional fee that is collected for the issuance of special military service plates that go to nonprofits and organizations that support veterans. In this case, the Marine Corps Coordinating Council is the beneficiary of anybody who buys a military plate, and they get charged an additional $25 fee. We just wanted to clarify it to let it be in statute that the additional fee collected will still be collected and not waived as well. There was some concerns from the nonprofits with regards to being able to collect those fees. So that's 2506, and that went out in committee. I need to do a little bit more clarifying language on that, but overall, looking pretty good. A couple things we're working on. So last year, House Bill 4951, I voted against it because I didn't think that the program was ready for prime time. It just got given to us at last minute. But this is the law that prohibits credit card companies from charging merchants fees on a portion of the transaction of state and local taxes and gratuities. Now, I get that, and I'm all for that. However, this law came in less than 24 hours, and there are serious concerns with it that I had with regards to the language and the implementation. So a federal court has granted an injunction, and certainly it's not going to be applied. So again, here is our checks and balances, and I think it's very important to show that we need to maintain checks and balances. A federal court granted an injunction against a law the state of Illinois passes. That is part of our checks and balances. 3 co-equal branches of government. Now, I know that the narrative out there is, that one branch of government is more powerful than the other branches of government, and that one branch of government in certain circles, the executive branch or the presidential office, is higher than the judges or higher than the Congress. That is not what our founding fathers wanted. In fact, our founding fathers explicitly put into place checks and balance systems of 3 co-equal branches of government, in part because they didn't want a king. This is a part of the checks and balance system on the state of Illinois that has, throughout the history of the United States, been and should be continued. So the federal court has granted a preliminary injunction. And you want to say, why is it the federal court? Because it could affect other entities outside of Illinois proper. Certainly there is a law, House Bill 1822, to repeal this Interchange Fee Prohibition Act. Don't know where that's going to be with regards to repealing that or working with individuals. Workforce, clean energy, we just talked about that. the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity awarded 88 awards totaling $57 million through three Clean Energy Jobs Act aligned programs to support clean energy and workforce development. It's vitally important. We are all important, as we've talked about. Getting people to work, keeping people in work, and looking at emerging enterprises. So there's been a delay of about $50 million for after school funding program. We are working on that. So the General Assembly passes the budget. It's up to the executive branch to administer the budget. They need to administer it the way that we give direction. There's some confusion with regards to these after school program funding. So looking at ways to get this clarified up. Funding for after school programs have been delayed. It's affected about 27,000 students that could use after school programs and 2,000 job losses. So we certainly need to look at that. And then nursing home staffing. I think every single year I've been in the General Assembly, we have talked about nursing home staffings. And it's very difficult. In fact, half of the Chicago Veterans Home is not up and running because of staffing. You need to have a certain ratio of nurses and staffing in nursing homes for patients. And so continuing to look at that, understaffing is a huge issue. And so certainly something that is on the docket, not my committee, but still on the docket that I've known for a lot. The mass transit agencies is still on the docket. Metro, CTA, PACE, RTA, working with regards to that. Keeping in contact with my colleagues that are on the transportation committee. Representative Blair Sherlock is on the working group for mass transit, so she keeps me updated as well. And then there was a proposal to allow 4-year degrees at community colleges. Certainly, we need to look at accessibility for these degrees. There really are high demand jobs, technical fields, healthcare. But it stayed in committee, doing more work on that with regards to those laws. Plastic utensil waste in delivery apps. So there's a proposal to reduce plastic waste in food delivery. It cleared the House Public Health. So it would require apps like DoorDash and Uber Eats to provide single-use plastic utensils only when requested by the customer. Now, I have to be quite honest. This to me is kind of a common sense thing because if you're getting food delivered to your house, you already have utensils there. So you don't need an automatic an automatic classic fork or knife that comes with your food. Now, if you need it, certainly you should be able to request it, but it shouldn't be automatic. And I do have to say I have quite a few plastic forks and knives that I've never used because I just prefer to use regular utensils at my house. So that's a bill. That is House Bill 1600. There's a House committee that advanced a bill Thursday to phase out public school mascots and team names that reference disabilities. So House Bill 3527 would require Freeburg High School and other schools to retire mascots like midgets by 2028. While midgets to the average person might not be of a derogatory nature, it really is. A midge is like an annoying fly, and that's like the core of the midgets. So that's the most prominent example with regards to mascots directly referencing disabilities. Now, while rare, still there, but certainly this bill and Representative West has presented bills similar to this to stop and to ban mascots that reinforce negative stereotype, use outdated terms, outdated medical terms, colloquial terms, and mock or marginalize underrepresented or vulnerable communities, including individuals with disabilities. The same can be said about House Bill 1237. I believe this is probably still. So that passed out as well, would require schools using names such as Braves and Indians or imagery such as feathers, tomahawks to phase out the branding by 2028. They can still use existing materials, though both of those headed to the House floor. Not my committees, but they did. And then looking at a bill that stalled. So in Illinois, we have home rule and non-home rule community, and the only difference is population. And so the bigger cities can do more than the smaller cities and the smaller towns and villages. And so there's always bills to try to make them equal. They both have the same needs. They both have to work in the same space. But non-home rule communities, what's called the smaller villages, they have to do a whole lot more work with regards to like a real estate transfer tax or some other type of revenue. But the bill would permit non-home rule communities to add up to 3 cents per gallon to the existing state gas tax, and that money would only be used for roads and bridges. But it did not pass out of committee. So that's a little bit of the bill that we are working on. I want to say good morning to the folks that popped in. Roger, saw Roger Trend over the weekend. He's looking great. It was wonderful to see him in person. Bonnie and Gay, and I did see Bob Dunn on as well. So thank you all for joining us this morning. We went a couple minutes over. We started close to right on time, but we had a great guest speaker, and just hope everybody has a great Monday. We are in session Tuesday through Friday right now. Like I said, all the committee work is done. So just working on legislation, working on amendments. We do have a deadline of April 11th, I believe, to get all the bills out of the House to the Senate on the other side of the General Assembly. So and then conversely, the Senate is passing bills over to us. So still a lot of work to be done. But with that, have a great Monday. Have a wonderful week. And hopefully the weather will start improving and the wind will die down. And but again, there's still the flu bug out there, COVID, RSVs, and so please try to be careful and conscious. And if you are not feeling well, stay home or wear a mask or just be considerate of other people. So with that, have a great day. Again, happy Stephanie Day. So and I would just say enjoy responsibly. So take care. Have a great day. Bye.